Can I start by welcoming you all to this Sales and Leadership Management course. Now, over the next 2 days, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working together as a team. What you're going to find is the next 2 days is going to be fairly relaxed, but at the same time, it's going to be challenging. In other words, you're going to be taken outside your comfort zone. Because what this course is all about is getting you to think about what you're currently doing within your roles. But more importantly, start thinking about, what could you do more effectively to get the results that you want? So what I want to do is to share with you some of the key learning outcomes that you can expect to get from the next 2 days. If you think about the subject matter that we're talking about here, sales, management, and leadership, what I want to do is I want to take you on a journey, and that journey is going to help you start to understand what we mean when we talk about the best practice in sales management. And it all starts by having the right mindset. And there's two elements that we're going to explore here. The first one is what we call the psychological mindset. In other words, having the attitude to win, to be results orientated, to be focused on getting the best out of the people that you're working with. But then the next part of what we want to talk about here is exploring what we call strategic mindset. And that is absolutely having the right thought process that's going to allow you to plan and prepare to succeed in what you do. So that'll take us nicely onto considering what kind of plans do we need to have in place to be effective in our roles? And being really clear about the objectives and the strategy that we're going to apply to deliver those plans. Having spent some time on putting a plan together, it's how do we deliver that plan? So therefore, what are the key things that we need to focus on, and where do we need to be spending our time so that we absolutely maximize that time and the effort that we're putting in to ensure that we are going to deliver what we say we're going to do. That's going to lead nicely onto considering, how do we use the resources that we've got available to us? And of course, one of the most important resources is the people in your teams. And what we'll spend some time doing is considering what are the key skills? What are they good at? What could they improve on? So we'll take some time to look at your teams and to do some gap analysis, and then start to profile those people so that we can really understand, what they're doing at the moment that works, but more importantly, how can we help and support them to be even more effective in their roles? And that'll move us nicely into what is going to be a key part of these 2 days, which is how do we support and get the best out of our people? And we do that being an effective performance coach. So we're going to spend some real quality time tomorrow actually developing these key skills, learning how to coach and develop these people, and being able to give them the right kind of support that they need, dependent on where they are, within their current profile and that you've done on them, and how effective they are being at the moment. Finally, as a manager, one of the most challenging things you need to understand is how do you use your time to the best effect? So we're going to spend some time actually examining what you're currently doing right now and what's actually holding you back from being able to deliver the results that you want. And how can you change some of those things so that you can really start to maximize the time that you've got available to you. And finally, in terms of coaching, we're going to explore a really important element, which is emotional intelligence. And for many people, that's something that they're perhaps aware of, but they don't really understand the impact it can have in being a really top quality coach. Emotional intelligence is all about understanding yourself and indeed understanding what makes you work and operate effectively, and what motivates you indeed. And the next thing we then need to do is start to understand our people. So hopefully what you now realize that the next 2 days is going to be a journey. And by the end of these 2 days, you absolutely will have a toolkit that you're going to be able to use. But not only use, you're going to be able to build on all the great stuff that you're doing right now to become even more effective at what you're doing in the future. Right, okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to move on to what is, without doubt, one of the most important elements of being a successful salesperson. And if you think about it, being able to ask great questions is absolutely critical if you are going to get the information you need to be able to provide the right kind of solutions. Would you agree?
Yes.
However, being able to ask the right questions is only going to happen if you know what those questions are. And the way that we do that is by listening really effectively to whoever we are engaging with. So what I want to do with you now over the next 8 minutes or so is explore what do we mean when we talk about great listening skills. Okay, now there are 4 elements of listening skills. There are 4 levels that we can actually use. And indeed, we all do this. And what I wanted to share with you now is the difference between being a really effective listener and perhaps not being as good as you think you might be. So let's consider the 4 levels. The first one is what we call cosmetic listening. Now let me ask you, what do you think we mean when we say cosmetic listening? What is happening when we're using cosmetic listening? Josh?
Yeah, I think you look like you are listening, but you're not really.
Yeah.
Actually engaged.
Okay, and how does that manifest itself?
That you're not actually engaged, you're not consuming the information that you're receiving.
Okay, so what might you be doing if you're not really engaged, you're not really listening to what someone's saying effectively? What might you be doing?
Not too sure.
Okay, think about it. You know, sometimes if someone's saying something, Sharon, what were you going to say?
Looking like you're listening, but you're not actually really
Okay.
there.
Now that's kind of what I was looking for. So you look like you're listening, but you're not really there. Tell me, have you ever sat there and then someone's turned around to you and they've said, so, you know, what do you think about this? And suddenly you realise, I can't even remember what you were saying to me. In other words, you're there in body, but you're not there in mind. Your mind, your brain is somewhere else. You might be looking out the window. You might be looking at your watch, but you're not really engaged. And suddenly you find yourself feeling a bit exposed. Someone asks you a question and you're thinking, I'm sure I thought I was listening to you, but I didn't quite get that. We've all been there. We've all done it. It's not great practice. So that's what we call cosmetic listening. We're there in body. We're not there in mind. So if that's cosmetic listening, what is conversational listening? What do we mean when we say conversational listening? What might be happening now? Pete?
Is that where you break a subject just to make them feel more at ease with you? So you just may ask about how they're doing, are they busy, etc. You're just trying to soften and create a relationship with that person before you get down to the reasons as to why you're there.
So you're engaged in some kind of conversation. Exactly. Tell me, who do you think you're focused on more? When you're actually using conversational listening, who are you focused on more? Them or you?
You start off by asking questions about them, but very often you throw it back at yourself in order to be relatable to them.
Yeah, think about it. Have you ever found yourself actually cutting across someone else when they're talking? Does anybody relate to that?
Yes.
Or indeed, even worse, have you ever found yourself finishing someone else's sentence for them?
Yes.
Now, why do we do this? Why do we do this? Well, if you think about it, what we're actually thinking about is we're thinking about what we want to say more than what they're actually saying to us. And it's almost as if I finish your sentence for you, then I can actually make the point I want to make rather than really being engaged in what you're telling me. It's not good practice. So if you think about it, cosmetic listening, we're not even involved mentally. Conversational listening, you're actually thinking more about what you want to say rather than what they're saying to you. Not good practice. So if they're not good, let's consider now the next level, which is good, active listening. So how do you know if somebody is actively listening to you? What might they be doing? Josh?
I would say they're using acknowledging words like yeah, okay, at the end of like most sentences that you're saying.
Yeah, so they're actually agreeing, they might be agreeing with them, and when you say yes, okay, and what are you doing? What are you actually doing there?
You're letting them know that you're still patched in, you're understanding what they're saying.
So you're focused on what they're actually saying. What else might you, how would you know someone's really actively engaged with you and they're really listening to what you're saying? How would you know that? What would they be doing?
Giving you the information that you're asking for.
So that they potentially might be giving you that information, but how do you know they're really engaged? What kind of things might we observe them doing?
Eye contact.
So we'd have great eye contact with them. Good. And what else? You were doing it, you're actually doing it now, Christine. Okay.
Copying and mimicking the person you're speaking to.
Yeah, you're mirroring what I'm saying. You're nodding in agreement.
Yeah.
If you think about what you're doing here, you're actively encouraging the other person to keep talking. That's what you're doing. You're actively encouraging them to talk because you are engaged in what they are saying. I am interested in what you're telling me. I want to know more. I want to understand what you're telling me. That's called active listening. And it's great practice, by the way. So if active listening is good practice, and now we understand what we mean by that, what is deep listening? What do you think might be going on now when we're actually using deep listening skills?
Asking questions about what they're telling you, for them to expand on what it is they want to tell you.
Absolutely. So what we're doing is exploring what they're saying now. And why would you potentially want to explore what someone is telling you? What do you really want to know?
To find out their needs.
You want to find out what they need and
How you can help them.
how you can help them. And do you believe what they are telling you?
Yes.
Have you ever had somebody say to you, for example, might be something like this, they might say, "Yes, Steve, I'm really excited to be on this course." It's like, yeah, well, I'm hearing the words, but I'm not quite buying what you're telling me. I'm sure you've had something similar to that. So people say things to you and sometimes you think, do you know what? I'm not quite sure I believe what you're telling me. So when we're actually deep listening, what we're now doing is we are using our emotional intelligence to be able to understand, but more importantly, do I actually buy into what you're telling me? Do I believe in what you're telling me is the truth? And again, that is great practice. So let me just summarize what we've talked about here. Cosmetic listening. You're hearing body, you're not hearing mind. So in other words, not great practice, folks. We do it all the time. We're not really focused on what someone's saying. Our brain is somewhere else. Conversational listening. Now, we're actually conversing with somebody, but we're more focused on what we want to say rather than what they're saying to us. Again, not great practice. Active listening. We're now actually actively encouraging people to speak with us. In other words, I am interested in what you're telling me. I want to know more. I really want to understand. We might be playing it back to them. We might be encouraging them to continue and asking even more exploratory questions to really understand what they're saying. And finally, deep listening. Do I really believe what you're telling me? Am I buying into what you're telling me? So it's not just what they're saying, it's how they're saying it. great practice. And if we're able to use active and deep listening skills, that will allow us to get the real information to allow us to ask those really great questions. And that is critical if you are going to be successful in the world of sales.